Grazie Teresa, grazie a tutti voi, un pubblico affezionato. Avete visto sullo schermo molti nomi di qualcuno magari non c'è più, ma molti nomi importanti che hanno fatto parte della nostra storia di questi 15 anni, di queste manifestazioni culturali. Osservavamo poco fa con Maria Teresa Rubiani che questi incontri, questi talks portano molta fortuna ai nostri relatori, perché almeno 4 di loro che sono passati qui, non dico in incogniti, ma come personalità, diciamo, magari non molto conosciute al momento, sono diventati Pritzker Prize. Vi ricordo Francis Kéré, che è stato uno degli ultimi, Ken Kokuma, vi ricordo le Grafton Architects, ricordo David Chipperfield, che è venuto proprio all'inizio. Quindi questi talks di costruire, pensare, abitare portano fortuna, e io credo che la nostra relatrice di questa sera, vedete il suo nome scritto qui davanti sul podium, su Tiantian, ho una sensazione, diciamo, che potrebbe diventare il prossimo nostro futuro Pritzker Prize. Dico questo perché io ho conosciuto il suo lavoro attraverso anche una serie di incontri e una conferenza che lei ha tenuto l'anno scorso all'Accademia di Architettura di Mendrisio, dove si è tenuta la cerimonia di premiazione per il BSI Awards, che è il premio istituito dalla Banca della Svizzera Italiana, e ormai anche questo da una decina di anni, un premio molto prestigioso e internazionale, quindi sono delle scelte che vengono operate su una griglia di nomi che vanno da un continente all'altro del mondo, quindi la massima è uno degli osservatori, diciamo, più attenti, e l'anno scorso la vincitrice del premio è stata appunto la nostra gradita ospite di questa sera. E quando ho visto il lavoro che lei ha illustrato e di cui vi parlerà questa sera, siamo rimasti tutti molto colpiti, perché certamente il suo nome non ci era noto, le riviste d'architettura non se ne erano ancora occupate, adesso già su internet, da The Zine, da ArcDaily, eccetera, troverete riferimenti a questa, ma vi assicuro che la sua opera è un'opera possente. Nonostante sia giovanissima ed esponente quindi di una generazione di architetti cinesi un po' diversi da quelli a cui eravamo abituati nel passato, i suoi lavori sono di una forza straordinaria, dovuta sia ovviamente alla sua bravura nel capire, diciamo, le questioni dello spazio, della materia, ma anche alla sua forte sensibilità sociale, che è uno dei tratti, diciamo, molto innovativi di questa generazione, e che a mio avviso, in qualche maniera ci ha dato una lezione a tutti noi architetti anche occidentali, di particolare risonanza anche in Europa e anche nel nostro paese, perché, diciamo, io credo che uno dei temi fondamentali che Xu Tiantan ha posto, diciamo, con grande evidenza e con grande forza di convinzione è uno sguardo diverso sul mondo. Per molti decenni questo mondo che noi abbiamo conosciuto, soprattutto la mia generazione, ha marciato molto in fretta all'interno di un'idea di globalizzazione come un'espansione continua alla ricerca di un progresso che significava demolire, abbattere, costruire, violentare la terra. Vedete che la nostra lezione di oggi è dedicata proprio alla Madre Terra, come se, per così dire, non ci fosse mai domani. Questo meccanismo per alcuni positivo, si è rivelato alla fine in questi ultimi anni, questi ultimi 5-6 anni, un meccanismo anche perverso che ha mostrato il lato oscuro della globalizzazione. E siamo tutti reduci dall'esperienza della pandemia, del Covid, che ha bloccato i flussi, ci ha costretto, diciamo, a ripensare anche alla tecnologia in una maniera meno distruttiva di quella a cui noi siamo stati fino ad ora abituati. E la crisi climatica che ci ha posto drammaticamente di fronte al tema del cambiamento e della violenza che continuamente noi abbiamo esercitato, soprattutto negli ultimi 2 secoli, dalla rivoluzione industriale in avanti sulla nostra madre Terra, sull'emergere di un aspetto come dire, inusitato del tema dei flussi. Pensiamo al dramma delle grandi migrazioni. Che cosa significano i flussi delle migrazioni, che sono molto diversi dai flussi turistici o dai flussi delle merci. Insomma, ci ha costretto una serie di circostanze ad arrestare, come dire, il passo e a guardare al futuro anche con preoccupazione, ma, e questo diciamo, è particolarmente importante per noi architetti, le preoccupazioni si risolvono non con la disperazione, non con i gesti eclatanti, non con la protesta o non solo con la protesta, ma si risolvono attraverso il progetto. Soltanto il progetto può salvarci. E il progetto significa riguardare il mondo con occhi nuovi. E uno dei temi che caratterizzerà la lezione di questa sera, gli esempi che ci mostrerà Xi, sono relativi a un aspetto particolare che è particolarmente evidente su una larga scala in Cina, ma è molto presente anche sul territorio europeo e in particolare sul territorio italiano. E cioè il tema delle cave, delle cavità abbandonate, delle cavità dismesse. Abbiamo depredato per secoli la terra, scavando, estraendo i segreti della terra, scavando ed estraendo i materiali che ci servivano per costruire. E quando questo meccanismo ha cominciato a raffreddarsi o ad essere impedito, in nome anche della sostenibilità, ci siamo trovati con una terra gruviera, piena di buchi, di depositi neri e di spazi, come dire, abbandonati. Qual è l'occhio, diciamo, salvifico del progetto? Il fatto di guardare a queste negatività come delle opportunità. Quello che voi vedrete è uno spettacolo davvero esaltante, cioè la capacità di intuire che dietro quello che sembra un residuo di una civilizzazione che è passato come un rullo meccanico sulla terra, producendo disastri, possa trasformarsi nell'opportunità di trasformare questi vuoti in spazi destinati alle persone, in spazi dove la vita ritorna. E infatti il secondo grande tema che Xi ha posto diciamo a suo paese, ma che è un tema che noi dobbiamo per forza raccogliere anche qui in Europa e in Italia, è il tema di un progetto che è socialmente orientato. Il tema cioè di un progetto che riscopra il valore di una parola di cui avevamo perso il significato. Questa parola si chiama comunità. Noi ci riconosciamo come parte di una comunità globale, nel senso che abbiamo, come dire, degli stessi problemi, ma anche nel senso che come società noi condividiamo una coesistenza sulla Terra e quindi non ci può essere una soluzione individuale, non ci può essere una soluzione nazionale a un tema, per esempio quello del cambiamento climatico, quello appunto dei flussi migratori, a quello delle guerre, ma le soluzioni devono essere delle soluzioni che tengono conto del complesso della comunità. Costruire per le comunità significa ridare un valore allo spazio pubblico, altro tema di cui ci siamo, l'architettura, la turbo-architettura dagli anni 90 in avanti si è completamente dimenticata. Si è dato grande alimento alla costruzione di grattacieli, di edifici stravaganti, si è dato luogo al fenomeno cosiddetto delle archistar, delle edifici che dovevano meravigliare per la loro potenza di linguaggio, di tecnologia, di audacia costruttiva, ma dimenticando poi alla fine che insomma, lo scopo dell'architettura è quello di servire la società, non di asservire la società all'ego degli architetti. E quindi il tema della comunità è un tema assolutamente centrale su cui si gioca il nostro futuro. Il tema di ricostituire un senso di solidarietà attraverso che cosa? Attraverso quello che è il compito principale dell'architetto, creare edifici ma soprattutto creare spazi per dar luogo alla comunità. Questi due temi sono, ripeto, i due cardini, i due binari principali su cui si costruisce il lavoro, il pensiero di Xu Tiantian e del suo studio DNA e questi due binari corrono su un terzo tema altrettanto fondamentale e a noi europei molto vicino, molto caro, che è il tema di che cosa fare o perlomeno come noi ci collochiamo nei confronti dell'heritage. Possiamo chiamarlo tradizione, possiamo chiamarlo patrimonio, chiamiamolo come vogliamo. Heritage è un termine anglosassone, ma a me piace molto perché evoca il senso dell'ereditare, come si ereditano per esempio i caratteri somatici dal nonno al padre al figlio, e quindi non è soltanto, mentre il patrimonio richiama un'idea proprio patrimonialistica, ti lascio del denaro, ti lascio degli immobili, ti lascio dei terreni, l'heritage è molto più vasto e comprende una quantità di sfumature che includono anche la sensibilità, i tratti somatici, la cultura. E questo tema di come noi oggi ci dobbiamo rapportare al nostro heritage, e pensate l'importanza che questo tema assume in un paese come il nostro, che è pieno di stratificazioni che costituiscono il nostro heritage, è un tema appunto, è il fondo, il traguardo verso cui configurano questi due binari del lavoro sulla collettività e sulle risorse. Il tema dell'heritage è un tema che apparentemente può sembrare soltanto culturale, ed è certamente culturale nel senso più profondo, cioè ne investe la nostra cultura di uomini sulla terra, ma è un tema che ha anche dei risvolti economici. In molte società in cui il lavoro artigianale, che è stato sempre trascurato in favore del lavoro industriale o adesso anche del lavoro digitale nelle nuove tecnologie, rappresenta il nostro cordone ombelicale con la Madre Terra. Il lavoro artigianale, siamo qui all'interno di un forum che celebra i miracoli della ceramica, che è fatta di terra, di acqua, di impasto, è l'essenza, diciamo, del nostro paese. L'Italia è un paese manifatturiero che trasforma materiali naturali in artefatti culturali. Come si fa a conservare, preservare, ma a rilanciare nel futuro questa eredità senza cadere nel folklore? Questo è un grande tema che è culturale ma anche economico, perché da questo dipende anche il lavoro dei giovani e dipende anche il lavoro dei giovani architetti, che sempre di più saranno chiamati a confrontarsi con queste tracce del passato. Ora, quello che Xian vi mostrerà è molto interessante, perché quando noi parliamo di heritage di solito pensiamo ai grandi monumenti, ma invece l'heritage di cui noi parliamo è un heritage che a volte è anche molto povero, apparentemente molto marginale. La capacità dell'architetto è quello di intravedere dietro questa marginalità i margini, se così mi permettete, di una nuova centralità, di trasformare quello che apparentemente era marginale, laterale, in un valore aggiunto, in un qualcosa in più che si offre e quindi in sostanza considerare l'heritage non soltanto come qualcosa che noi abbiamo ricevuto sulle nostre spalle, infilato nelle nostre tasche, ma come un tessuto di continuità a cui noi siamo chiamati obbligatoriamente a contribuire con il nostro lavoro. Cioè voi siete coloro che aggiungeranno un nuovo heritage contemporaneo a quello già esistente. E vi ringrazio molto della vostra attenzione e dunque voglio presentarvi anche fisicamente il nostro ospite, che vedo lì, sì. If you can reach me here at the podium. Ecco, accogliamolo con un applauso. Please.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to the invitation and introduction from Professor Fulvia Ilata. Thank you so much. It's really my great honor to be here. And big congratulations to Maria Teresa for this success on Cheshire, 40 years of legacy, this wonderful event. And last but not least, thank you all for coming today. Grazie. So I arrived in Bologna yesterday. This is my first time visiting Bologna. And I was walking through these endless corridors, very impressive space, of course, and it's instantly give you a sense of a public space and sense of a belonging to the community. So today I want to share with you our practice in rural, mostly in the countryside of China, where people live in nature, live with nature, and from this point, they cultivated their own culture and sense of community. And I also want to talk about how in this process that architecture can become a social, strategic, and a systematic strategy to revive the culture and heritage in the countryside, in different villages. So let's start with the Songyang story, which we started 10 years ago and has been collaborating with the local communities and local authorities for years by adapting a method, a pedagogy, we call it architectural acupuncture, which is rather minimal intervention or more sensitive approaches, engaging with each village community, really tailored to the local heritage and context. And this is an ancient map of Songyang County. You can see that this is area surrounded with the flat land in the center, the river running through the county, and it's surrounded by the mountains. And now this is county urban center of Songyang, with this monumental Dushan iconic mountain and the river, the mother river running through the entire region, which is the flatland as the county urban center. And there's still thousands of small natural villages scattering around in the mountainous region. And since over 1,000 years ago, this region has been occupied with local residency, local communities cultivated, on this agrarian base of our society, and it eventually developed their own heritage, culture, and all these ritual ceremonies and events. And of course, like any other rural regions in the country and worldwide, many of the villages was facing critical issues, losing population and losing the confidence in the village's future, especially in the economic future. So young people leaving their home villages and eventually moved to the cities, the bigger cities, for new potential, for better employment. Most of these villages became, we call it hollow village, which means only very few population, mostly in elders, still remain as the inhabitants of the village. So this becomes the starting point for us to engage with this region by looking into each, really traveling and investigating, communicating with the different village communities in this region. And of course, first of all, to ask for, what are you proud of? What's making this community proud? And what's something there's always something belonging to a certain village community, either the history, either the or the ancestor, or a specific agricultural production. Anything can become the sense of pride and honor for a certain village. So that's how actually we started to, actually over almost 10 years collaboration in the region with different villages on this area in this region. And eventually each village was introduced with a specific small-scale public program according to its own heritage and history. And the idea is that with this new public space is to restore the village identity and restore the sense of pride and honor belonging to the community. But it's not limited to this scale of public program, but it's really rather to motivate and to inspire young people returning from cities and to initiate further development, further like cultural or eco agricultural production within the region. So it becomes a mapping system by years of practice and collaboration. So today I want to introduce maybe just a few examples of this Songyang story. And the first is that, I'm sorry, this is actually the wrong title. It should be Hakka Indenture Museum in this region in the mountain village. When people, the first generation of the ancestor arrived in this land over 200 years ago and built up this Hakka community. The collection of Hakka Indenture Museum in this village, basically by an elementary school teacher, Mr. Che, has become the largest indenture collection in the entire country. So this becomes the initial point to establish a village museum dedicated to Hakka indenture collection, but also can perform as a community center, a village public community space, as an open space. And this museum also becomes the opportunity to revive this local, long-lost masonry building technique. You see that at the center, this traditional local masonry building built by hands. And we were able actually to find 3 skilled masonry workers in the entire region who helped to train young workers through this project. And the design of this indenture museum, village museum, first of all, by this local building masonry techniques, but also to cultivate, to articulate a sense of space, belonging, connecting with the history, or contemplating the history. So it takes the format of this courtyard, traditional courtyard building typology, and increase a sense of space, really kind of connecting with the nature. Even the creek, existing creek on the side was preserved as a natural element running through the space. But when you actually lower the light, natural lighting, compress the natural lighting in the space, you hear better of the sound of the creek, the water passing through the space. And there's a different time dimension that we've tried to create it with this masonry technique. So this space, this museum, rural museum, also inspired investor from Shanghai to renovate the adjacent abandoned farmers' houses into a homestay business and employ local villagers, mostly women, from the village as their staff to run this cultural, educational tourism, rural tourism business, and also train them with local crafts like bamboo weaving techniques. So we often say that in the rural revival process, we have to work, of course, rural cultural, educational, and tourism is a very effective industry. So we work with the rural tourism, but we don't work for the rural tourism. It actually says that the local life in different villages and also the kind of the sense of legacy, heritage from different villages has a value and can bring people together, making the connection between urban and rural. At the same time, can also bring economic potential back into the village. So we were also looking at abandoned infrastructure. For example, this was an abandoned bridge. You can see the two parallel bridge. One was for vehicle built in the 90s and left the original Schumann Bridge abandoned and become an unsafe structure. And it was about to be demolished in year 2016, 15, around that time. And then after a visit, we actually proposed to the local authority that maybe this could be a preservation renovation project together with the regional planning along the river to restore this bridge into a pedestrian bridge by adding a canopy, a wooden canopy, timber canopy, above this abandoned bridge infrastructure. And the design of the wooden canopy is actually just to take the adjacent farmers' houses as the local typology, but with the rhythm that's really echoing with the existing bridge structure. You see the on and off canopy covers really as a reflection of the bridge rhythm, structural rhythm. And it instantly becomes a gathering space for the two villages across the river that used to be one village back to over 200 years ago and was divided by the flood. And at the same time, this new pedestrian bridge as a walkway also provide a not only as a common space, but also as a viewing platform crossing over this 270 meters wide river as a viewing terrace, viewing platform for the adjacent water conservancy facility, which has over 1,000 years ago, years of history. Maybe you can see the, I don't know if you can see the on the side, this water conservancy facility has a history of 1,000 years, which I found very fascinating. That whenever I walk in any places in Italy, there's always a history of thousands of years that's somehow find the kind of a resonance with the Chinese history and culture in general. And this sense of a common place has a history. Back in the ancient time in this region, a bridge, a covered bridge, is not only the for transportation, but more for the as a very important community space for gathering, for important events, for meeting points. And this is the adjacent water facility shown on this picture. So the bridge also has multiple functions in a way, and that's actually our intention with all these acupuncture projects introduced into each village. I mean, every village is different. Every village has something very unique, that the community has a strong sentiment connected with the history, with the past, with the ancestor. But in that sense, all these acupunctural programs are unique, but on the other hand, they are always multifunctional and requires minimal maintenance, not like the public buildings in our cities where it's more or less artificial in a way. So here we also have a public space, a common space hidden in the mountain in this bamboo forest. So this idea came from when we first we were first asked by the village, the head of the village, that can you make something out of bamboo here? Because we have all these bamboo forest, and it's really the abundant resource of our village, and also almost as a kind of identity of our village. So instantly we were, it's beautiful bamboo forest, but we came up with this idea of working with live bamboo and then weave them into an open space in the nature as a gathering space for the community, for events, but also for visitors to take this as an open leisure space. So this was maybe the shortest construction among all our small projects. It took about a week to construct the space. And it resonates with the traditional literati spirit from ancient China. This is a painting by Qiu Ying from Ming Dynasty, to have this self at ease in a bamboo garden in the nature. And this form comes automatically because it's easy to weave, to construct. We call it the Pantheon of Songyang County, and refer to the Pantheon in Rome. And here you can also reserve just a local traditional opera to take it as a bamboo theater. So with this project, I want to maybe talk a bit further with how this vernacular building, traditional building in China, and I guess also global-wide, traditionally, it's always a kind of integration with the nature. The sense of space, shaped by architecture, it doesn't have to be isolated space or standalone space. It's always part of the nature, and taking nature as the center of the space. Working with the village heritage and community, we also inevitably we need to look into the agricultural production, which I found also similar to our ceramic heritage in this region. But today I want to talk more about the food, because every village has its own agricultural production. Like Xin village is well known for the best sugar production in this entire region. So the brown sugar becomes a starting point to introduce or to restore the village identity, cultural heritage, and at the same time to become a new entity, economic entity to improve the village revenue and economic income in this region. And so this is the new factory programmed with the new type of working stations and production spaces, following by the traditional requirements sequence of brown sugar production. And of course, the selection of material is by the requirements of brown sugar production, together to integrate with the community cultural facilities. And that increase, actually, with the increased central production space, and together with the leisure public space for the community. So this is the sequence, actually, from the traditional ancient procedure of handmade brown sugar in the village. Start from this cultivation of sugarcane and then production into this brown sugar. Basically, it was produced only in the family workshops. That means your kitchen, family kitchens. So there was a lot of issues, of course, with the safety, fire, and hygiene, sanitary issues. But if you look at this production mostly happening, well, it's within the winter season before the Chinese New Year. And then you see this was really such a striking, very intriguing performance with all this heat and steam and then the movement of these sugar masters, sugar villagers, skilled sugar production workers, and very phenomenal in a way. So it really brings inspiration of taking the production space as a central performance space. So the architecture is articulated as a central stage, with the structural rhythm and also with the new working station to integrate all different family workshops to work together within this central space. So architecture is a background rhythm with this structural, sequence, the chimney, the working station, and also the light. And the entire roof is lifted up, so you can see this openness, this transparency on this the ground level. So the whole performance, actually the production, we always call it performance because in this case it's equivalent. So the production as a performance is entirely open up to the visitors, and you can look through how this traditional way of making brown sugar production, by hand, by this cooking phenomenon, and it's really a celebration in the winter season before the Chinese New Year, and the air, even the air in the village smells. You can smell the sweetness of the brown sugar. So whenever you walk into this village during this time, it's such a sensation that comes along with this production, and it also becomes a festival, a cultural heritage of this Xing village. So with this new production space, of course, it's upgraded standards to improve both the quality and also the price of the brown sugar, and increased 5 times already after this factory was built. At the same time, this new factory also integrated individual family households into a collective economic structure. We call it co-op system, a collective co-op system. In that sense, they can perform better in the market economy. And so this is in terms of an increase of a revenue, increase of income. But at the same time, this traditional agricultural production, the process becomes a modern, a contemporary concept of performance, and to make this factory a live museum to showcase the village heritage. And of course, it's running 24 hours during the winter season, making, even the lighting is designed as a stage lighting. So this is really, the architecture is adapting to this kind of a phenomenal performance as a theatrical setting for this agricultural activity. And the space can also be used as community center for different activities, and it also becomes a new type of cultural community, cultural activity program in this region. And together, if you look at this sugarcane picture at the center of the lower line, before the factory, the village was actually, because of the the low price of sugar production, actually the villagers switched to a production of tea plantation instead of brown sugar. So there was really a decrease of sugar production in the village. But now with this new factory, with this not only as a production, but almost as a cultural festival event for the entire region, that people from neighbor villages, from different county, urban center, will visit this region during the winter season as a celebration, as a almost ritual event in this area. And also together with the increase of the sugar price, now farmers are planting back the sugar cane. So that's the landscape picture around the image around the village again. The landscape of this village is also changed from tea plantation to sugarcane plantation, but not by landscape design. It's rather by a system of social design because of the improvement of production of a certain operation production industry and increase the revenue. So it changes, the landscape. So it's also, I want to introduce this as a systematic transformation through this region, through the village by village. And next case is another Aka village in the mountain. It's called Caizhai. It has the best tofu in the region. So the villagers, after seeing the brown sugar factory, the villager community were really eager to approach us and bring up this proposal of tofu factory. So we went through the village together to look for the buildable area, which is the this terraced place by the entrance of the village was buildable site location, and together with the village community, we decided to choose this location. And then you see that the site was already with this terraced topography, and it fits perfectly with the different sequence of tofu production, by soaking, grinding, and boiling and deep frying. The different ways of the procedure of making tofu is very different from the procedure of cooking brown sugar. Right, so compared to this central stage of brown sugar as the main central space, as the main production space. So the space of tofu factory is divided into different chapters, 6 chapters in total, like the episodes based on the sequence of this very specific production. And again, this factory is run by villager union to integrate family workshops into collective entity. They are the shareholders of this operation, and then they are the operators. Basically, they are the owner, the operator of this factory. And again, this space is designed as transparent as a live museum. But here we introduced assembly timber structure, because tofu is rather a daily food, right? You can basically make tofu in your kitchen every day. Not like brown sugar, is more about the celebration before the Chinese New Year. So this tofu factory at the entrance of the village is functioning more like a common kitchen, a community kitchen for the Caizhai village. And of course, you can see this different sequence of making tofu. This is the deep frying section. So basically, along this terraced topography, there's a revealing of traditional procedure of tofu making in its own sequence. And at the end, you will arrive at this tasting hall. And we also introduce, even though the tofu making, it's food production, so it's more separated from the public space. But through a parallel corridor walkway, you can take the steps up and observe this tofu production through this almost transparent glass walls, separation walls. And as you were observing, this performance, these episodes of tofu making. So that instantly creates a seeing and seeing kind of a interplay space. And on one hand, it's a production with a traditional and heritage. On the other hand, it's a walkway for villagers and visitors to meet together, to have leisure outdoor activities. And like any of other village acupuncture projects, every space is with low maintenance, easy maintenance, and always open to nature, to have this dialogue with with the nature. And in a way, it's also the very traditional local way of sustainability with our ecology. And this walkway is a common space shared and also a meeting point for villagers and visitors. And at the same time, the timber structure also creates dialogue with the adjacent historical building across the river. It's a modern timber structure, but in a way, it's kind of creating this common community, common space for this village. And I forgot that I think we missed a title of this Fujian Tulou. Maybe we have the text in the next pages. And I want to introduce a different region in Fujian province, which is southeast part of China. In the mountainous region, there's this very specific building typology called Fujian Tulou. Tulou means earth building. Literally translated as earth building means it's made by mud. And you can see this wall really by the rammed earth wall wrapping around. This is the title of Fujian Tulou. So in 2008, 46 Tulou buildings were inscribed by UNESCO as World Cultural Heritage. As very unique and specific vernacular typology. Basically, Tulou was built as a defense structure. You see, in the valley in this region, there's still thousands of Tulou in this area. So first of all, it's a defense structure. It's with very thick ram earth walls, 1 to 2 meters thickness, and small openings and different type of joints for defense purpose. So basically, it was a collective community to fight for any invasions, fight during wars. And there was constant fight on this land for centuries. And at the same time, it's also for communal living with the interior of the Tulou, built with a central courtyard, but then row houses wrapping around, protected by the ram earth wall, and often with hundreds of people, even hundreds of households living within one Tulou building. So basically, you could also see a Tulou or several Tulou buildings as one village. So there are 2 different indigenous Tulou for Hakka people and for Minnan people. In the Minnan people, you actually have your secondary entrance and second internal courtyard, more sequence within your own units. And in Hakka Tulou, everything's more open and common and sharing. With this Tulou project, we're not looking into the heritage or the UNESCO Tulou, which is under a very strict preservation process, but instead we're looking into thousands of low-grading cultural buildings that in the region that were eventually abandoned by the local communities, because that when the original inhabitants started to build their own houses, individual houses, along with the economic development since 90s, many of the Tulou buildings become vacant and abandoned, eventually become almost ruin relic. So we're looking into a new way of adaptive reuse of these abandoned Tulou, actually lower grade of cultural buildings, by the Minister of Housing and Construction. They're not considered as, the UNESCO Tulou. So this is actually a very common situation in the region, that local residents, they don't see Tulou as a inhabitable place anymore, because of course you want to have your own house, your own kind of a modern living environment. So this becomes a situation leaving the thousands of abandoned Tulou in the region. So with this adaptive reuse proposal to the local government, we worked together with the 3 counties, taking 7 abandoned Tulou as vacant Tulou buildings as the model example for the rest of 1,000 Tulous. So the idea is that even though these have become relic or ruin, there's still a new potential by reusing these existing conditions, and even the ruin becomes a new opportunity. And we're not looking into rebuilding every Tulou into its original condition. That will cost a lot more investments or public funding, which would be problematic and not sustainable in a way. But we're taking the relic, the existing relic, as new opportunities. For example, the torn down space, the voids, can become a new way of garden or courtyard or lookout terrace. So these are the ideas that just taking existing condition, and it becomes the more economically sustainable and also more ecological way, seeing the current condition of this relic, this ruined Tulou buildings. So we start, with this Tulou one by one. And these are the 2 Tulou buildings, still have a few original inhabitants. I think one with the 6, the other one with the 11 family units still occupied. So first of all, we look into upgrading their living conditions. For example, enlarge the kitchen place to avoid fire, but also to every level adding a new toilet space, shower space for common use function. But then we are also looking into the voids, or these broken or unfurbished voids, as the opportunity to introduce a new community space, or even to attract visitors to enter. So instead of finishing, rebuilding all these voids, we're going through the space very carefully, only taking the minimal intervention to reintroduce a sense of a community, and also to bring in new economic potential, because this is a Tulou that the families also, they are open to visitors, and they really want to have the new opportunity for visitors and to bring their better income. So this is a Tulou under construction, of course, with the traditional handcrafts. And what's fascinating about this Tulou is that the construction can happen simultaneously when people are still living within the Tulou. But this is actually the context of Tulou. Not every family is refurbished at the beginning of the construction. Some family moving earlier, and then they have their row house furbished, but the adjacent unit might be furbished later on. So it's also like a kind of a nature of Tulou going on through this construction and reconstruction. And this is a Tulou burned down by fire over 200 years ago, and this could become a opportunity to introduce the Ram Earth culture as a new cultural center, because the Ram Earth is really a very dominant local building technique in the region. They still have very skilled workers taking care of all these, UNESCO Tullow, heritage Tullow buildings. So in this case, this leftover ram earths burned down by fire become the monuments and part of the exhibition of this ram earth culture. Of course, this can offer a ram earth workshop for visitors to understand its traditional building heritage. And Qifenglo was abandoned 3 decades ago, and eventually, so we took this, if you look at this, the void, it was the part of the building with the roof, with the walls collapsed during typhoon. And this automatically becomes a viewing terrace to look out to Tullow. Normally, Tullow is with such a protective building volume. There's very small window openings to look out. So this actually gives this Tullow a new identity of providing this lookout terrace and bring in breeze to the central courtyard. And this becomes an agricultural workshop. And we're not refurbishing every part of Tullow. We still keep the ruins, keep the walls as what it was. And this is the construction process. So the original ram earth was carefully fixed, mended by the local worker with a traditional technique. And on the ground surface, we build up this ram earth as a projection, and then to keep the second floor up as the viewing terrace. And another Tullow is converted into a public Tullow library, Tullow study, with these voids becoming gardens and terrace, new courtyards. And we also keep the original trees, because this Tullow is the home village of a well-known Chinese literature scholar, Lin Yutang. So this becomes a new type of courtyards, gardens within this very strict Tullow language. And everything else is preserved as with the traditional technique, with this original craftsmanship done by local villagers as skilled workers. So this brings all these Tullow buildings with the construction, it brings a sense of heritage, a sense of local knowledge, also from the skilled elder workers passing on to the younger construction workers. And a new Tullow next to porcelain heritage, historical site, Porcelain Queen, becomes a visitor center and also a space for porcelain workshops, ceramic workshops. And this is it's also under construction and with carefully examination of the original traces, original ram earth. But again, adding with the preservation part is carefully done with the local skill sets. And together with this new Tullow, we also try to introduce a bit of modern techniques, like our assembly modern compressed timber structure, which does not interrupt the overall typology, but introduce a new level of open space, public space, created by this modern structural system. And this is how this Shenping Tullow is under construction. We work with the local, roof tiles, floor tiles, and to preserve the texture of these original walls. And the last chapter, I want to introduce a quarry project, which I was introduced to that in Italy. We still have lots of quarries in the region. And when I first visited quarry in Jingling County, I was really fascinated, intrigued by so many small quarries. It's a tough quarry, operated in a small county like Jingling, with over 3,000 quarries, used to be operated by family workshops, so household operation, but really created over 3,000 of quarries, and eventually was abandoned since around the millennium because of the ecological interruption and safety issues. So if you visited this region, you will see many small abandoned quarry cave spaces in that area that are actually, fenced away because of the safety issues. So they become the waste of an abandoned industry, quarry industry. But as in the eyes of architect, we see these as fascinating spaces, spectacular architecture that, you know, an architect can never design a space like this. We can never compete a quarry space that was excavated by local quarry workers, local villagers, with hand, you know, over day by day, year by year, you know, generation by generation. So there was really a very strong sentiment. And this is area with the quarrying industry heritage, history of over 1,000 years. So every family is related with the quarrying business. And this becomes a collective memory for the local community, for the entire county region, that they wanted to find something valuable out of these abandoned quarries as waste of a past business industry. So we again proposed together with the local community, you know, after consulting with the quarry workers and also the young villagers, and together with the local government, to bring up a systematic strategy, also looking into different types of quarries in the region, but introducing a new type of program, cultural, public leisure programs that can be the restore the cultural identity of the Jingyun region, but also bring a new economic potential, you know, bring people visiting this region. So these are the different quarry. You know, the program is introduced to each quarry really based on its own spatial characteristics and spatial quality. And eventually, we have 3 quarries built, and we have also 3 more quarries starting construction this year, which will provide more programs to this area. And of course, the safety is the priority, right? We'll work with the geotechnical engineers on safety reinforcement. So this was done by very careful examination of the geometry of the engineering from the engineering point of view, to introduce concrete as a new layer of texture for safe reinforcement, but also the texture also reflecting the quarry texture. So we have 3 quarries done. The first quarry is by the request of the elder quarry workers. There are around 50, 60 years old in the region. And then they are still very proud of this quarrying technique. And so this becomes a heritage, demonstration stage for the quarry workers, so they can show, if by request, they can show you the traditional quarrying techniques. And also this quarry, open quarry, becomes a leisure place as the first arrival point. And the next quarry is converted into a performance space by the acoustical quality. And the quarry was used by local villager as a fish pond. So we introduced this sunken level to collect rainwater, but also can be used as a sunken central stage for the younger villagers, the young women around the village, for their performance, and then they post it online. but also as a traditional, stage and audience seats for the local traditional wuju opera. And now these days, there are more and more artists, musicians coming to this space, because of the acoustical effect. And this is a very unusual stage for performance. So they come, many musician artists visiting this area, and then they perform on stage and record and post online, and which also make this area very popular on internet. And there's the third quarry. These three quarries are really next to each other. You can walk, 1 to 2 minutes, and then you are already arrived at the other one. So basically, they are like neighbors in a village. They used to operate it by the family workshops. So they are really like the neighbors, quarry neighbors next to each other. So the three, as a cluster, makes a good community. And this number 8 is the biggest one with the 2 small, entrance and then a bigger quarry behind. So we wanted to take this one as you see at the entrance, this is a safety reinforcement by concrete, but really taking the texture on the left side, reflecting the texture of, left side is concrete panels, by wooden panels, and then on the right side, it's the quarrying texture, the trays. So it's really resembling the quarrying texture. So they are really next to each other with number 8 and number 9. With number 8, because of the internal topography, when by year 2000, when the quarry was closed down, the leftover working station and the interior topography created a sense of inner mountain. That's our impression on our first visit. So we wanted to take this opportunity. You see this terrace railing going up to different terraces. There was the original topography before design. So this instantly becomes a sense of ritual space that I wanted to dedicate to the local cultural and also the calligraphy and mountain stone carving heritage in the region. So this quarry number 8 becomes, we call it a book mountain. Book mountain is a cultural symbol in the Chinese history. It leads, there's no path leads to the book mountain without indigenous. So that means that the book mountain is with this walkway of original, working station leading by the railing and steps. It will take you to the different terraces of studies place or this library. It's a concept between public library and Chinese study, more like a study room. But the other design is actually done carefully with only indicating the walkways, the passages. So that is to say that as a visitor, you can't arrive at every corner of this quarry. You only get to land on the accessible spaces. So the design is, again, very carefully only to introduce a trace, a walkway, or even like a membrane, a soft texture into the quarry as a public landing area, public activities, public and cultural programs. But you can see that with this extraordinary space of 38 meters as the height, actually the new design intervention is rather a scale that's breaking down into human activities, sitting, standing, reading, looking around. So we intentionally break down the scale of this public trace or public walkways, public territory, in contrast with the magnificent scale of quarry, which is not a human scale at all. So in that sense, it creates this sensation of within this space And you, of course, you were impressed by this incredible scale and almost monumental spatial sensation done by quarry workers. But on the other hand, you're able to stay and to move around with this human, more sensitive human scale introduced within the quarry. So we wanted to introduce this quarry as a monument of collective memory of Jingyin County. So that's it for my presentation today. Grazie and 谢谢.
Ma credo che abbiate capito, perché quello che diceva all'inizio quando ho assistito alla prima... No, stay here. See? Why don't you stay here? Yes. Yes, maybe you can sit over there. Yeah. All'emozione profonda di questi spazi, ma soprattutto di questa azione che ha credibilmente fatto vedere con mano come le cicatrici della civilizzazione, della meccanizzazione, della globalizzazione possono diventare come i segni di una nuova civiltà e come si possa coniugare la fantasia e la creatività con l'attenzione ai processi reali della vita, che sono i processi produttivi, i processi di lavoro, i processi economici. Quindi veramente thank you very much, Xi, for this wonderful lecture, which has been a lecture of life, not only of architecture. Abbiamo ancora forse una decina di minuti prima di accompagnarla al treno e se ci sono domande, qualunque domanda, informazioni, siamo qui.
Innanzitutto grazie per la bellissima conferenza e per i progetti davvero straordinari. Lei è una delle poche donne founder di uno studio di architettura. Nonostante le statistiche ci dicono che le donne che si laureano in architettura sono in numero maggiore rispetto agli uomini, poi alla fine la presenza femminile negli studi, ma soprattutto in posizioni diciamo importanti, sono davvero rare. Qual è il suo punto di vista a riguardo e soprattutto qual è la situazione delle donne architetto in Cina? Grazie.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a very important question. I think for myself and for everyone in the room and for our profession around the world. And I think there's a new era of more and more women, female architects in this profession. In terms of within the schools, but I would say that also in the practice field, because architecture in this new century is not only about making monuments like in the past, but rather we need to take architecture with a new perspective of caring and curing, healing, related with our current challenges and issues, which, I mean, I think in the beginning, with our practice in rural countryside, it wasn't like coming as the first conscious as agenda, but eventually after you're seeing the issues, the social issues in the rural villages, and again, you see that design, and you realize that design can really make a big change or impact, improvement with these rural symptoms. And then this keep on going, you know, one after another, and we started to see the new social transformation within the county of Songyang. And of course, next we work with the Tulou, the abandoned vernacular architecture. And for us, there was really an urgency. You know, if you don't make anything, if there's nothing done to these traditional buildings, these will definitely disappear. The vernacular buildings, you can never rebuild in the future. And also quarry, you know, one by one is actually, I think in general, we started to take architecture as a social intervention, and very often we take initiatives. We propose with the design proposal to the local authorities and communities, saying that this problem could be solved in a social and systematic, strategic way. So that's why, for us, the practice is really minimal intervention. But I think in general, it's a sense of caring and curing and healing. So that comes, I wonder if I'm a mother of 3 children, so I wonder if this is really by nature, and you want to fix things, right? You feel like there's urgency. And also we make a comparison, we call it acupuncture, which is performance by doctors. So I think in this time, architecture can be practiced in a very different way as well. We're not receiving projects. Instead, we need to, step out of our office, studio. Maybe we go into the rural, the countryside, and we really look for problems, issues that and provide design as the remedy, as a solution for such issues. And to me, I think this is the biggest part of why we practice architecture. And I think it maybe it comes with Mother Nature, or it comes with the just a different approach, different agenda with architecture. So it doesn't have to be the monument you're creating. No, not at all. Not like last century, like before, but rather what kind of a good impact we can bring with the design. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Mi sembra che questa risposta dica più di tanti trattati sociologici su quello che può essere e quello che è di fatto il contributo dell'altra metà del mondo, della componente femminile nel cambiamento della società, no? Questa idea mi sembra molto bella, espressa con grande semplicità ma con grande forza, che non è detto che le scuole d'architettura siano delle macchine per produrre monumenti, no? Quindi che spostare l'asse dell'architettura. Questo, diciamo, difficilmente a un uomo sarebbe venuto in mente. Ecco, quindi è veramente molto preciso quello che lei ha detto, molto sensitivo. Ci sono altre domande?
Buonasera, intanto per prima cosa grazie per il lavoro che ci ha mostrato stasera, è stato veramente fantastico e mi è piaciuto veramente tanto. La domanda che sto per fare è un pochino forse egoistica perché la sto chiedendo per me. Sono uno studente di 16 anni e sto studiando anche io architettura e design e diciamo non sono così tanto convinto verso il mio futuro di aver preso questo e volevo chiedergli cos'è che gli spinge di fare questo lavoro e se ha qualche consiglio per me, diciamo, per ecco.
I think on one hand, you shouldn't limit yourself in terms of acquiring knowledge, and you should be curious and, try to understand as much as possible, with the life, with the world around. There's no limit. There's no specific restriction on your knowledge if you want to be an architect. And on the other hand, being an architect, I think brings the opportunity to explore the world and life on different places around the world with many possibilities. That's how I could say with my own experience. I feel like it's really almost a privilege to be an architect and really to get to see how people live in different parts of the world, different parts of the country. Even every village has its own way of living, way of life. And I found that's very inspiring and also very fulfilling. We provide design solutions, but also the practice becomes a learning process. Always try to understand life and place, with its legacy, with its history and heritage. It's endless learning process. And I think I can do it, until the end of my life.谢谢。
Se volete c'è spazio ancora per una domanda, poi dobbiamo scappare.
Hello, thank you for everything you told us. I'm from Brazil. We are a very young country, so we used to call, I think we don't understand this concept of architecture, acupuncture. We call it retrofit, but I wish you could tell us the difference between retrofit and acupuncture architecture.
Difference of what?
Sorry?
And what would the question you want me to tell the difference?
If you can tell us the difference between architecture, acupuncture architecture, and retrofit.
What is retrofit?
Rebuilding.
When we talk about retrofit, we mean any act of refurbishment of something which existing.
Okay.
Maybe making a new facade or
Exactly. Acupuncture means a small-scale intervention, right? A new intervention. So it could be a existing structure or infrastructure, or it could also be a new program based on local heritage. So it's always relevant, but doesn't mean the building has to be reused. It could be a new structure, a small new structure, when it's necessary. But it's always related with anything existing on this place with the community, like, the tofu factory, the brown sugar factory. These are the new buildings. But that's really, yes, because you need new building to upgrade the production condition, which is not possible with the family kitchen, right? So, but it's not like a new alien. I don't think it's absolutely new, because the new structure is based on existing heritage and the tradition of life and production within its own community. So, and even with this reuse, acupunctural, more sensitive, like we always say, it's a minimal intervention. You see the quarry and you see the tulou, it's not just a preservation of building itself. And tulou, it's not to rebuild and everything into original condition. And quarry is not either. But really I think what's important with this adaptive reuse is really to introduce a new type of public cultural programs into existing space and structure. But like Tulou, the original functionality doesn't work anymore for either defense or for communal living. So this abandoned space can become a new public program for common gathering for public activities. So I think it comes very, it wasn't only about the technique of refurbishing or renovating or preserving the vernacular, but it's more important as a holistic approach with the social, economic, cultural, ecological point of view. And so everything's all integrated. When you introduce a new program, for example, a library, Tulou Library, it automatically reshapes the design into, with your proposal, within your design phase. And, when you introduce a quarry as a performance space, and the design technique might also be different. So I think these are all related, and as an architect, it's also important to try to expand your perspective, vision, from the beginning of decision making, when even in the process of diagnose, identifying the problems, you already kind of have the design ideas, formulating. So this is the process. I think we cannot wait for a given commission with a fixed program. I think we need to step further into the decision-making phase, and we need to work together to define the programs, what's appropriate, what's more fitting with the problems or with the needs from the community. So this actually, I think it's not just the skill sets, the design techniques we learn from the schools. But on the other hand, I also think our education needs to expand to really make a initiative to have more interaction and engagement, more social intervention with our current social issues and climate challenges.
Thank you very much. Niente, ringraziamo tutti voi e un ringraziamento particolare per anche la grazia delle sue risposte a Tiantian.